On April 22nd, 1915, poison gas is first used on a large scale on the Western Front of World War I. But what prompted the use of chemical weapons during the conflict? And which country was the first to use them? Also, what impact did poison gas have on World War I soldiers, including Adolf Hitler? In World War I, the awesome power of industrial-era weaponry was unleashed. With armies bogged down in trench warfare, military leaders looked for ways to break the stalemate. Toxic smoke had been used occasionally in warfare since ancient times. The French had also used small amounts of tear gas in police operations in the years before World War I. But it was the Germans, under the direction of chemist Fritz Haber, who began actively developing chemical weapons early in the war in an effort to break the deadlock of the trenches. Germany's first attempt occurred when they fired some tear gas shells in France in October 1914, but Allied troops were unaffected. In January 1915, the Germans launched shells loaded with lethal xylyl bromide at Russian troops on the Eastern Front. But because of the cold temperatures, most of the gas simply froze. In Belgium, during the Second Battle of Ypres in April 1915, the Germans discharged 150 tons of lethal chlorine gas against Allied troops. The effects were devastating, causing confusion, panic, and death among soldiers who had no defense against this new and horrifying weapon. A British soldier who was far enough away to survive the attack that day described its aftermath. There staggered into our midst French soldiers, blinded, coughing, chests heaving, faces an ugly purple color, lips speechless with agony, and behind them, in the gas-soaked trenches, we learned that they had left hundreds of dead and dying comrades. This attack marked the first large-scale use of chemical weapons in warfare, setting a dangerous precedent for future conflicts. It had a lasting impact on the war, leading to the development of even more deadly chemical weapons by both sides. Although mustard gas has gained the most notoriety and the worst reputation, phosgene was actually a far more deadly poison gas during the war. In fact, 85% of the deaths from chemical weapons in World War I were from exposure to phosgene gas, while only about 2 to 3% were from mustard gas. German soldier Adolf Hitler survived more than one gas attack during the war. He was even temporarily blinded by a British mustard gas attack in October 1918 and was recovering in an army hospital when the armistice that ended the fighting was signed. In the end, far more men died from other devastating World War I weapons than from gas. Of the estimated 8 million combat deaths in World War I, only 91,000 were from chemical weapons. In reality, the psychological effects of chemical warfare were much more devastating to the soldiers than the gas itself. Ironically, Germany's chemical weapons pioneer Fritz Haber received the 1918 Nobel Prize in Chemistry for his process for synthesizing ammonia from nitrogen and hydrogen gases, which revolutionized the fertilizer industry, increasing crop production and reducing famine across the world ever since. He later defended his role in World War I chemical warfare by arguing that death is death, no matter how it is inflicted, and thus, he maintained, death by chemicals is no more inhumane than death by steel bullets. The introduction of poison gas in World War I remains a dark chapter in human history, showcasing the ruthless, brutal tactics employed during the conflict. Here are other events that happened today in history.
In 1778, during the Revolution, U.S. Naval Commander John Paul Jones raids the English port of Whitehaven. In 1889, thousands of would-be settlers make a mad dash into the newly opened Oklahoma Territory. In 1937, three-time Oscar-winning actor Jack Nicholson is born in Neptune, New Jersey. In 1970, the first ever Earth Day, meant to increase environmental awareness, is celebrated in the U.S. In 1978, The Blues Brothers, featuring John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd, make their world premiere on SNL. In 2004, U.S. Army Ranger Pat Tillman, a former NFL player, is killed by friendly fire in Afghanistan. In 2023, U.S. military forces lead a dramatic evacuation of diplomats from the U.S. Embassy in Sudan. And now it's time for our Today in History quiz. Who was the first human to die in spaceflight? Gus Grissom, Vladimir Komarov, Elliot See, or Yuri Gagarin?
Liked learning about poison gas in World War I? Then you'll love this one about how Italian fascist leader Benito Mussolini was nearly killed as a young man during World War I. Tap the screen to keep the story going on Today in History.